I stand in the corner of the Chen family's grand ballroom watching my cousin Melissa announce her engagement to David Wu, my boyfriend of 3 years, the man I thought would propose to me tonight, the man who told me just last week that he was saving money for something special that would change both our lives forever. The crystal chandelier catches the light of her massive diamond ring as she shows it off to our aunts and uncles with a kind of possessive satisfaction that makes my stomach turn while I clutch the small velvet box in my purse that I had planned to give David tonight. Matching platinum cufflinks engraved with his initials that I saved for 6 months to afford, skipping meals and taking extra tutoring jobs to earn the money because I wanted to give him something worthy of the Chen family name. "Who's that girl in the corner?" I hear Great Aunt Lou whisper to my grandmother, both of them looking directly at me with the kind of polite confusion reserved for uninvited guests. "Is she one of the catering staff? She's very pretty, but I don't recognize her." My grandmother Chen squints through her designer glasses, studying my face for a long moment, with the clinical attention she usually reserves for evaluating business proposals, before shrugging dismissively. "I'm not sure, dear. Perhaps she's someone's plus one, or maybe one of the hotel management staff Jennifer invited to be polite." The familiar knife of invisibility twists in my chest with surgical precision, but tonight it cuts deeper because David catches my eye across the room and has the audacity to look apologetic, as if this betrayal is something that happened to him rather than something he orchestrated. As if the 3 years we spent together building what I thought was love was just an unfortunate misunderstanding that got out of hand. 3 months ago, when I introduced him to my family at Cousin Jennifer's wedding, he seemed charmed by the Chen family wealth and connections, the hotel empire that spans 5 countries, the real estate holdings that include half of downtown Shanghai, the old money that built our family compound with its private gardens and ancestral halls, and servants who have worked for us for generations. Now I understand he was charming them, not charmed by them, and I was just the convenient bridge between his ambition and their acceptance. "Xiao Yu," my mother Chen Wei Ming calls out suddenly, using my childhood nickname that makes everyone in the room turn to look at me with varying degrees of recognition and dismissal. "Come help serve the dessert. We're short-staffed tonight, and the caterers are overwhelmed." The room falls silent because even though I am wearing the same Chanel dress as my cousins Melissa and Jennifer, even though I have the same Chen family nose and the same expensive Ivy League education that my grandmother insisted upon, even though I've lived in this house for 20 years since my parents died, to them I will always be the help. Chen Yu, the orphaned daughter of the black sheep's second son who died in a car accident when I was 5, raised by my grandparents out of duty rather than love, forgotten at every gathering despite living in their house and carrying their name and attending their schools and dating their approved young men who were supposed to marry into the family fortune through me. "Actually," Melissa purrs, her arm linking through David's with the kind of possessive satisfaction that speaks of long-term planning rather than sudden romance, "David and I have some additional news to share beyond just our engagement announcement. We've been planning this surprise for months, waiting for the perfect moment when the whole family could be together." She looks directly at me as she continues, her eyes bright with malicious triumph. "David's going to be joining the Chen Holdings board of directors as soon as we marry next month, and I'm pregnant with our first child, the next generation of Chen heirs who will carry on the family legacy." The pregnancy announcement hits me like a physical blow, not because I still love David. That died the moment I saw the ring on her finger and understood the scope of their deception, but because of the timeline that doesn't make sense until it suddenly makes perfect sense. Melissa is 3 months along, which means they were together before David ever met me, which means our entire relationship was orchestrated from the beginning, which means every kiss and every promise and every moment I thought was building toward our future together was actually building toward this moment of public humiliation, where I would finally understand that I was never the intended bride, just the convenient introduction service. I excuse myself to the bathroom where I can think clearly without the weight of 100 eyes watching my reaction to this carefully staged betrayal. And that's when I overhear Melissa's mother, my Aunt Chen Wei Hua, speaking on the phone in the adjacent powder room with the kind of casual cruelty that suggests this conversation is routine rather than exceptional. "Yes, it worked perfectly," she says, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a long-term plan finally coming to fruition. 3 years of having you unknowingly introduce David to all the right family members, letting her pay for their dates at expensive restaurants so he could learn our business customs, having her bring him to family gatherings so he could study our financial discussions and board meeting schedules. And now he's exactly where we need him to be, trusted by the old generation and married into the new generation with a legitimate claim to inheritance rights. My hands shake as I process what I'm hearing. The pieces of a puzzle I didn't even know existed, suddenly clicking into place with devastating clarity. The way David always asked detailed questions about family business during our quiet dinners together. Questions I thought showed his interest in my life, but now realize were intelligence gathering. The way he always offered to pay for things, but somehow never had his wallet when the bill came, making me cover expenses while he built relationships with my money. The way he seemed to know exactly which family members to charm and which to avoid, information he couldn't have gained from our brief introductions unless someone was coaching him. The girl was always too trusting, just like her father. Aunt Wei Hua continues with the casual dismissiveness she's always shown toward me, as if I'm a problem that was solved long ago. Chen Ming was the same way, believing the best of everyone until the very end, never seeing the obvious signs that his own family was planning his removal from the business and his life. The words hit me like ice water because she's talking about my father's car accident, as if it wasn't an accident at all, as if the tragic death that orphaned me and left me dependent on family members who clearly resented my existence was actually a carefully planned murder designed to eliminate the one person who might have protected me from this exact scenario. The pregnancy ensures David can't back out now even if he develops a conscience, Aunt Wei Hua continues, her voice carrying the satisfied tone of someone who has thought through every possible contingency. And with you having introduced him as her boyfriend for 3 years, it looks like a natural family romance when Melissa steals him, rather than an obvious infiltration plan. No one will question David's sudden insider knowledge of our overseas accounts or his convenient timing in proposing the hotel expansion project that will require selling father's original properties, the ones that should have gone to Yu's father and now legally belong to her. I realize with growing horror that David wasn't just after our family's money and status in some general way. He was specifically after my inheritance, the shares and properties and overseas accounts that my father left me when he died. Assets I've never claimed because I trusted my family to manage them properly, and because I was raised to believe that wanting my own money was selfish and grasping. The same shares that would give someone voting control over board decisions about international expansions and property sales, the same shares that Aunt Wei Hua has been managing as my legal guardian since my father's death, telling me year after year that I'm too young or too naive or too emotional to handle such important financial responsibilities. Once they're married and the baby is born, we can have you declared mentally incompetent to manage her own affairs, my aunt continues with the clinical detachment of someone discussing a minor business transaction. The suicide attempt we've been planning will provide perfect documentation of her unstable mental state, and with David married into the family, he'll be the natural choice to take over her shares permanently. We've been building the case for years, all those times we've had to medicate her for her episodes at family gatherings, all those medical records showing her inability to maintain stable relationships or hold down meaningful employment. The medication that makes me sleepy and confused during important family meetings, medication I thought was for anxiety, but now realize was designed to make me appear incompetent in front of lawyers and accountants. The way my job applications always seem to get mysteriously rejected despite my qualifications, forcing me to remain financially dependent on family generosity. The systematic isolation from family friends and extended relatives who might have offered me alternative perspectives or support systems outside the compound. The confrontation happens when I return to the party, armed with the knowledge of their deception, but still reeling from the scope of it, my mind racing as I try to calculate how many years they've been planning this elaborate destruction of my life and my father's legacy. I walk straight to David and Melissa with my spine straight for perhaps the first time in years, feeling the weight of 20 years of systematic diminishment lifting from my shoulders as I finally understand that my invisibility was never about my inadequacy. It was about their theft. "Congratulations on your engagement," I say loudly enough for the entire room to hear, my voice carrying across the ballroom with the kind of clarity that makes conversations stop and attention focus. And congratulations on successfully executing a 3-year con game that would make my father proud if you hadn't murdered him for these same inheritance shares 20 years ago. The room goes dead silent, except for the tinkling of champagne glasses being set down too quickly, and the rustle of expensive fabric as every person in the ballroom turns to stare at me, with expressions ranging from shock to embarrassment to the particular kind of horror that wealthy families reserve for public scenes that might affect their social standing. David's face goes white with the kind of panic that confirms everything I've just accused him of, while Melissa's mouth opens and closes like she's trying to find words for a situation she clearly never planned for. Aunt Wei Hua begins moving toward me with the quick efficiency of someone used to cleaning up messes before they spiral out of control, her eyes already calculating damage control strategies. You, dear, my grandmother says in that condescending tone I've heard my entire life, the voice she uses when she's pretending to care about my well-being while actually protecting the family's reputation. I think you've had too much champagne tonight. Why don't you go to your room and rest? We can discuss whatever's troubling you in the morning when you're feeling more yourself. I haven't had any champagne, grandmother, I reply with the calm that comes from finally understanding the scope of what I'm fighting against. I've been too busy serving it to the family members who have spent the last 20 years erasing my existence while stealing my inheritance. But I have been listening to Aunt Wei Hua explain over the phone how she's been managing my father's money for 2 decades, while planning to transfer it all to David through this elaborate marriage scheme that requires my death to be complete. The security guards who patrol our family compound are already moving toward me. Of course, my own family would have me physically removed from my own home rather than address the accusations I'm making. David grabs my arm with a grip that will leave fingerprint bruises, his nice guy mask finally slipping completely to reveal the calculating predator underneath. You're embarrassing yourself, he hisses close to my ear, his breath hot with champagne and malice. No one will believe you. You're just the forgotten daughter having a breakdown because you can't accept that I chose someone better, someone who actually matters to this family. That's when I realized the scope of their cruelty extends beyond simple theft. It wasn't enough for them to steal from me. They needed me to believe I deserved nothing, that being forgotten was my natural state, that my pain and isolation were character flaws rather than systematic abuse. They needed me broken enough to never fight back, grateful enough to never question why my father's daughter lived like a servant in her own ancestral home. The last thing I remember before everything goes black is being dragged from the ballroom while my family watches with embarrassed disapproval, as if my pain is an inconvenience to their perfect evening rather than evidence of their decades-long conspiracy. Great Aunt Lou actually tuts her disapproval as I'm hauled past her table, shaking her head as if my emotional breakdown is poor manners, rather than a reasonable response to discovering that my entire life has been a lie designed to facilitate my eventual murder. 3 days later, I'm found dead in my apartment, the small studio I was forced to rent off the family compound after my embarrassing scene made it impossible for me to continue living in the main house. From an apparent suicide by overdose, a typed note left on my computer, apologizing for the scene at the reunion, and claiming I couldn't bear the shame of losing David to my own cousin, couldn't live with the knowledge that I was so forgettable that even my own family couldn't remember my name at gatherings. The note, which I obviously didn't write since I was unconscious from whatever drug they used to ensure my compliance, also includes a formal renunciation of all claims to my father's estate and a declaration that I want all my assets to go to the family members who actually contributed to building the Chen legacy, instead of those who only caused embarrassment and division. Then I open my eyes and realize I've been reborn. I'm 22 years old again, sitting in my childhood bedroom in the Chen family compound, staring at the cream-colored invitation to Cousin Jennifer's wedding, the wedding where I first introduced David to my family 3 years before the reunion that ended my life, the single moment where everything went wrong and I handed my enemies the weapon they needed to destroy me. The morning sunlight streaming through my window illuminates the gold-embossed lettering with almost supernatural clarity, and I understand with absolute certainty that I have returned to the exact moment where I made the choice that killed me, given a second chance to rewrite the ending of my story. My phone buzzes with a text message from David Wu, the notification sound making my skin crawl with the muscle memory of betrayal, even though in this timeline he hasn't betrayed me yet. Excited for the wedding tonight. Can't wait to meet your family properly and show them what a lucky guy I am to have found you. The memory of his hands around my throat during those final moments, disguised as comfort while he positioned me for the fatal injection, makes me drop the phone like it's burning my fingers. I remember everything with perfect, devastating clarity. Every humiliation, every forgotten name at family gatherings, every stolen moment of inheritance, the pregnancy announcement that destroyed my world, the staged suicide that gave them everything they wanted while erasing every trace of my father's legacy from the family records. But I also remember something else, something that gives me hope instead of just rage. Marcus Chen, my father's sister's son who lives in New York, working as a film producer for an independent studio that specializes in stories about corporate corruption and family betrayal. Marcus, who has sent me birthday cards every year since I turned 18, cards that my guardians intercepted and never gave me. Cards I only discovered when I was going through legal documents after they declared me mentally incompetent to manage my own mail. Marcus, who called the compound asking for me during holidays but was told I was unavailable or traveling when I was actually locked in my room as punishment for asking too many questions about my father's accounts. Marcus, who looked for me when he visited Shanghai for business but was told I was studying abroad when I was actually being held in a private medical facility for observation after one of my episodes. In my past life, I never knew Marcus was trying to reach me because every attempt at contact was intercepted by the family members who needed me, isolated to maintain their control over my inheritance. I never knew he existed beyond a name in the family directory that I assumed was just another distant relative who had no interest in the orphaned daughter of the black sheep brother. But I remember now his business card falling out of one of my grandfather's desk drawers when the lawyers came to execute my suicide note. Marcus Chen, executive producer, Phoenix Rising Films, with a Manhattan address and a personal note written on the back in handwriting that looked like my father's. For you, whenever you're ready to come home to family who remembers your name and wants to hear your voice, I have been given a second chance, and this time I won't waste it on the people who systematically erased me from their lives while keeping me around for their convenience. This time, I won't introduce David to my family, won't provide him with the access he needs to study our financial structures and build relationships with the board members who will eventually vote him into power over my inheritance. This time, I'll build my own empire, my own name, my own life so brilliant and public and successful that they'll see my face everywhere they look and remember exactly who they tried to destroy. This time, I'll become so famous that forgetting my name will be impossible because my name will be everywhere. On movie screens and billboards and magazine covers and award ceremony speeches. They wanted to erase me from their family history, so I'll write myself into world history instead. And they'll have to watch every success and celebrate every achievement and remember every day that they chose to destroy the one person who could have been their greatest asset. The first thing I do is call Marcus, dialing the number I memorized from that business card but never had the courage to use when I thought I was alone in the world. Marcus Chen, Phoenix Rising Films. His voice is warm and professional, with just enough of a Shanghai accent to remind me that we share the same roots, even though we've been kept apart by people who had everything to gain from our separation. Marcus, this is Chen Yu, your cousin from Shanghai, your father's brother's daughter. The surprise and joy in his voice tells me everything I need to know about how thoroughly my family has isolated me from anyone who might have offered genuine love and support. You, my God, I've been trying to reach you for years. Are you okay? Are you safe? I've called your house so many times, but they always said you were unavailable. And when I visited Shanghai, they said you were traveling. But I could never get any specific information about where you were or how to contact you directly. For the first time in my life, someone asks if I'm safe, instead of assuming I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention and resources the family provides. The concern in his voice, the genuine relief that I've finally contacted him, breaks something loose in my chest that I didn't even know was frozen solid from years of emotional neglect. I need to leave Shanghai immediately, I tell him, surprised by how steady my voice sounds when I'm asking for help instead of apologizing for existing. I have information about family business practices that aren't legal, and I have evidence about my father's death that proves it wasn't an accident. The people who killed him are planning to kill me too, but they need to wait until after they steal my inheritance through a marriage scam they're setting up. Can you help me disappear before they can complete their plan? I'll have a plane ticket waiting for you at Pudong International Airport within 2 hours, Marcus says without hesitation, without asking for proof or details or anything except the confirmation that I need rescue. Private jet, direct to JFK. Do you need help getting to the airport safely, or do you have transportation you can trust? I can manage getting there, I tell him, already moving around my room with the efficiency that comes from planning escapes during long, sleepless nights. I have copies of financial documents hidden in places they don't know about, and I have recordings of conversations that prove they've been stealing from my father's estate for 20 years. You. Marcus's voice is gentle but serious, carrying the weight of someone who understands family betrayal from professional experience. Whatever you've uncovered, we'll handle it properly through legal channels and international authorities. You don't have to face this alone anymore, and you don't have to be afraid that no one will believe you. I've been investigating corporate family corruption for 12 years, and I know exactly who to call when family members use their power to steal from each other. The relief is so overwhelming, I have to sit down on my bed and breathe carefully to keep from crying, because crying would waste time I don't have. In my past life, I faced everything alone because I didn't know I had options. Didn't know there were people in the world who would choose to protect me instead of exploit me. This time, I have family who actually wants to keep me alive long enough to tell my story. I text David. Something urgent came up with family business. Have to miss Jennifer's wedding tonight. So sorry, but duty calls. His response comes immediately, and I can practically feel his desperation through the phone. What kind of family business? Is everything okay? Can I help with anything? I could come with you for moral support. The eager way he offers assistance, knowing now that he's fishing for information to share with Melissa and her mother, makes my skin crawl with revulsion. In my past life, I thought this eagerness meant he cared about me and wanted to be involved in my life. Now I see it for what it was: intelligence gathering disguised as devotion, a predator trying to get closer to his prey by pretending to offer protection. Just boring property management stuff, I text back, deliberately vague. Nothing interesting, just signatures and paperwork. I'll call you when I get back. I don't block his number yet because I want to see how desperate he gets when I become unavailable. How quickly the caring boyfriend mask slips when he can't access the Chen family information pipeline through me anymore. I want to watch his true nature reveal itself through increasingly frantic attempts to reestablish contact, because that desperation will be useful evidence when I eventually destroy him. New York overwhelms me in the best possible way, like stepping into a world where my existence matters simply because I choose to exist here, rather than because someone else decides I'm useful enough to tolerate. Marcus lives in a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn, filled with film equipment and movie posters and vintage cameras and the kind of creative chaos that makes my chest feel lighter just by breathing it in. His girlfriend Sarah is a documentary filmmaker working on a project about corporate corruption in multinational family businesses, and when I show them my evidence about the Chen holdings, her eyes light up with the professional interest of someone who has spent years looking for exactly this kind of story. This is a multi-generational pattern, Sarah says, spreading my father's documents across their kitchen table with the careful attention of someone who knows how to read financial records for signs of systematic theft. Your great-grandfather built the business legally through hotel development and property investment. Your grandfather maintained it legally through international expansion and legitimate partnerships, but your uncle and aunt have been systematically looting it for the past 2 decades while using family members as fronts for laundering money through fake marriages and staged inheritance transfers. Marcus pours me tea in a cup that doesn't match any of the others and sits down beside me with the careful attention of someone who understands trauma and knows that pushing too hard for details can cause more damage than patience. I need you to know that your father left you more than just shares in the Shanghai properties. He had accounts in New York, in London, in Switzerland. Money that was never touched because you were never told it existed. Money that your guardians have been reporting as lost or inaccessible while they used it to fund their own investments. The numbers he shows me are staggering in their implications for everything I thought I knew about my financial situation. My father wasn't just the black sheep who embarrassed the family with his unconventional thinking. He was the smart one who saw what his siblings were planning and moved his personal assets offshore before they could steal them, leaving me enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life without ever needing to work, enough money to fund my own business ventures and creative projects, enough money to make my family realize exactly what they lost when they decided I was expendable rather than valuable. But more importantly, Marcus continues, his voice gentle but serious, your father left detailed records of every illegal transaction your aunt and uncle have made for the past 20 years. He was building a case against them when he died, working with international prosecutors to expose their money laundering and tax evasion schemes. The car accident happened 3 days before he was supposed to testify before a grand jury that would have sent them both to prison and seized all their assets as proceeds from criminal enterprise. Sarah's documentary project takes on new dimensions when I agree to be interviewed about my family's crimes, but I don't want to be just another victim telling her sad story to generate sympathy and outrage. I want to be the star of my own narrative, the hero who exposes corruption and builds something beautiful from the ashes of family betrayal. I want to be so successful, so visible, so unavoidably present in the world that my family can't escape seeing my name and face everywhere they look, can't turn on a television, or walk past a movie theater, or open a magazine without being reminded of exactly who they tried to kill and exactly what they lost when they chose theft over love. I want to start my own production company, I tell them, the idea crystallizing as I speak. I want to make films about stories like mine, people who were written out of their own family's histories but refused to disappear quietly. I want to produce content that gets shown everywhere, that gets talked about at dinner parties and business meetings, that wins awards and makes money and puts my name on every screen in every theater in every city where my family does business. Marcus grins with the expression of someone who has been waiting years for the right partner to help him change the entertainment industry. I know some people who would be very interested in funding that vision, especially if it comes with the kind of documentary evidence you're carrying. Stories about family corruption are incredibly popular right now, and authentic insider perspectives are exactly what every studio is looking for. 6 months later, I'm living in a Tribeca apartment that overlooks the Hudson River, serving as executive producer on 3 different films in various stages of development. And I have a distribution deal with a streaming service that reaches 200 million subscribers worldwide. My days are filled with meetings and script readings and budget negotiations, the kind of productive exhaustion that comes from building something meaningful rather than just surviving systematic destruction. The documentary about family corporate corruption, featuring extensive interviews with me and evidence about the Chen holdings that Sarah spent months verifying through international legal databases, is being submitted to the Sundance Film Festival, and early industry screenings are generating the kind of buzz that translates into award nominations and distribution deals, and the sort of cultural conversation that affects how people think about family loyalty versus ethical responsibility. But the real satisfaction comes from watching my bank statements grow every month as Phoenix Rising Productions builds its reputation for finding and developing stories that other studios won't touch because they're too controversial or too personal or too likely to generate lawsuits from powerful families who don't want their secrets exposed. We specialize in the stories that matter most, the ones that powerful people spend money to keep quiet, the ones that change how audiences think about wealth and privilege and the price of protecting family secrets at the expense of individual lives. My phone buzzes constantly with text messages from David, each one more desperate than the last as he realizes that I've disappeared from his life completely and taken his access to the Chen family fortune with me. Where are you? I'm worried about you. Your family says you're traveling but won't tell me where. Did I do something wrong? Please call me back. I miss you so much. Please just let me know you're okay. The progression from concern to panic to anger tells me everything I need to know about his real motivations and confirms every suspicion I developed during my previous life about his true character. In my past life, I would have been touched by this apparent devotion and would have rushed back to reassure him that nothing was wrong. Now I see it for what it is. A predator realizing that his prey has escaped and trying every manipulation technique he knows to lure her back into range. Marcus introduces me to Daniel Kim, a fellow producer who specializes in international distribution and has connections with theaters and streaming platforms across Asia, Europe, and North America. Daniel is Korean-American, raised in Los Angeles but fluent in Mandarin and familiar with the business culture that shapes wealthy Chinese families like mine. When I tell him about my background and my goals for Phoenix Rising Productions, his immediate response isn't sympathy or horror, but professional interest in the stories we could tell and the audiences we could reach. Family corruption narratives perform incredibly well in international markets. He tells me over dinner at a restaurant in Koreatown, especially when they're told from the perspective of someone who escaped the system rather than someone who got destroyed by it. Audiences want to see survivors who fight back, not just victims who suffer beautifully. Daniel doesn't treat me like damaged goods or like someone who needs to be handled carefully because of my traumatic background. He treats me like a business partner who brings valuable assets to our collaboration: financial resources, insider knowledge, international connections, and most importantly, the kind of authentic story that audiences remember long after the credits roll. I want to work with you, I tell him, but I need you to understand that this isn't just business for me. The people who tried to kill me are still out there, still stealing money, still destroying other people's lives. Everything we build together needs to serve the larger purpose of making sure they can never hurt anyone else the way they hurt me. That's exactly the kind of motivation that creates legendary careers, Daniel says with the smile of someone who understands ambition driven by justice rather than just profit. The best producers are the ones who have personal stakes in the stories they're telling. 18 months after my rebirth, Phoenix Rising Productions has offices in New York, Los Angeles, and London, with development deals pending in 3 more countries. I've produced 6 films that have premiered at major international festivals, won 2 documentary awards for Sarah's corruption expose, and been featured on the cover of Variety magazine as one of the 35 under 35 producers changing global cinema. My name appears in entertainment industry newsletters on a weekly basis, and my company's projects are discussed in business schools as examples of how to build sustainable creative enterprises that generate both profit and social change. But the real satisfaction comes when I receive an invitation to cousin Jennifer's baby shower, forwarded through Marcus, because no one in my Shanghai family has my current contact information, and they've apparently been trying to reach me for months through various mutual acquaintances and business connections. The invitation is addressed to Chen Yu. Marcus, can you make sure she gets this? We miss her so much and would love to have her join our celebration. Which tells me everything I need to know about how their attitude toward me has changed now that I'm no longer available for exploitation. I RSVP through my assistant at Phoenix Rising Productions, including a formal note that I'll be attending with a small documentary film crew because we're shooting a project about family dynamics in wealthy international families, and this gathering would provide excellent material for our research. The panicked phone call from my grandmother comes within 6 hours of my assistant sending that RSVP. You, dearest girl, where have you been? Grandmother's voice carries the artificial warmth she reserves for important business associates whose cooperation she needs to secure. We've missed you so much at family gatherings, and we've been so worried about you since you disappeared without telling anyone where you were going. The hypocrisy is breathtaking in its shamelessness, but I keep my voice warm and professional because I want this conversation recorded for posterity. I've been busy with work, grandmother. I'm a film producer now. I have my own company in New York. You might have seen my name in the entertainment industry news. Or perhaps you caught one of my films at the Shanghai International Film Festival last month. The silence on the other end tells me she hasn't been following my career, which means she's about to do frantic internet research and discover exactly how famous I've become in circles that matter to wealthy Chinese families who care about international prestige and cultural influence. A film producer? She says, and I can hear the calculation in her voice as she tries to figure out how this development affects her long-term plans for my inheritance. How wonderful, dear. I had no idea you were interested in the entertainment business. I've always been interested in telling stories about families, I reply with perfect honesty. Particularly stories about what happens when family members steal from each other and use love as a weapon to control people who should be protected instead of exploited. When I arrive at Jennifer's baby shower 3 weeks later, I bring Daniel and Sarah and a full documentary crew with professional lighting equipment and releases for everyone to sign if they want to appear in our film about international family business practices. I'm wearing a custom Armani suit that costs more than most people's cars, jewelry designed by artists whose work appears in museums, and the kind of confidence that comes from knowing that I'll never again need anything from people who spent decades teaching me that my needs didn't matter. The shock on my family's faces when they realize the scope of what I've become in the 2 years since I disappeared from their control is worth every difficult month of building my new life from scratch. David is there with Melissa, who isn't pregnant yet, because in this timeline, I never introduced him to the family connections he needed to execute their original plan. And I watch his face go white when he realizes the magnitude of what he lost when I vanished from his life without explanation. You! Aunt Wei Hua approaches me with the kind of fake warmth she usually reserves for government officials who have the power to shut down her illegal business operations. You look absolutely wonderful. We had no idea you were doing so well in America. Why didn't you tell us about your success? Really? I smile with genuine amusement at her attempt to rewrite our family history in real time. I've been featured in Forbes Asia twice this year as one of the most successful young producers in international cinema. My company just signed a 3-picture development deal with Netflix that's worth $30 million. My documentary about corporate corruption and family businesses premiered at Sundance 2 months ago and won the Grand Jury Prize, and it's being distributed in 47 countries, including China. The way her face changes when she realizes I'm no longer the invisible, grateful orphan she could manipulate and control is absolutely delicious to watch. David tries to approach me during the gift opening ceremony, probably planning to reactivate whatever charm offensive he used to manipulate me in our previous timeline. But I'm surrounded by my professional team and the kind of security that comes with being a public figure whose safety matters to insurance companies and international business partners. You, he says when he finally gets close enough to speak, his voice carrying the desperate undertone of someone whose carefully laid plans have been completely destroyed. I can't believe you just disappeared like that. I was so worried about you. We all were. Were you? I ask with polite interest, the tone I use for interviews with journalists who ask questions I find tedious. How sweet. I've been incredibly busy building a career and a life that actually fulfill me rather than just existing as a convenient bridge between other people's ambitions and my family's resources. The documentary premieres 6 months later to standing ovations at film festivals around the world and immediate international attention from prosecutors, journalists, and human rights organizations who specialize in cases involving family-based financial crimes. Within 3 weeks of the premiere, investigators in 6 countries are opening formal inquiries into the Chen holdings based on the evidence I provided. Evidence that Sarah spent 18 months verifying through forensic accountants and international legal experts who confirmed that the scope of my family's theft extends far beyond what even I realized when I was living through it. My aunt and uncle are arrested simultaneously in Shanghai and London on charges including fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit murder in my father's death, and violation of international banking laws that carry sentences of up to 30 years in prison. The hotel empire they built using stolen money collapses within days as assets are frozen and properties are seized as evidence in the criminal proceedings. But the real triumph comes when Marcus and I fly to Shanghai for my grandmother's emergency family meeting, where she's attempting to salvage what's left of the family reputation and figure out how to maintain control over the business interests that aren't currently under criminal investigation. I walk into that same ballroom where I was humiliated and forgotten in my previous life, but this time I'm accompanied by international lawyers and documentary filmmakers and journalists who treat me as a person of significance rather than a convenient target for exploitation. Grandmother, I say, taking the seat at the head of the table that used to belong to my grandfather, the position that should have been mine by birth if my family had chosen love over theft. I think we need to have a conversation about inheritance and accountability and the difference between a family that protects each other and a criminal organization that just happens to share DNA. The legal proceedings take 18 months to complete, but the emotional satisfaction is immediate and grows stronger every day as I watch my story become part of international conversations about family abuse and corporate corruption. Every newspaper in Shanghai runs extensive coverage of the Chen family scandal. Every business news program features interviews with me about corporate accountability and the psychological impact of systematic family betrayal. Every entertainment magazine covers my growing film empire and my engagement to Daniel, who proposed to me on the set of our latest production, who has loved me consistently and patiently since the day we met, who never once forgot my name or treated me like I was lucky to have his attention. The wedding announcement runs in newspapers across 3 continents, with photos of Daniel and me at various industry events and film premieres, looking like the successful creative partnership we've built together rather than the kind of strategic business alliance my family specialized in arranging. The guest list includes Academy Award winners, international human rights activists, and business leaders who have built ethical companies that actually create value rather than just stealing it from more vulnerable family members. David sends increasingly desperate messages through mutual acquaintances, trying to arrange a meeting where he can explain everything and make things right between us. But I'm beyond his reach now in every possible way. I have security teams, legal representation, international business interests, and most importantly, a life filled with people who chose to love me rather than people who were stuck with me through biological accident. The final piece of justice comes when Melissa, abandoned by David once it became clear that marrying her would provide no access to my resources, reaches out through my publicist to request a meeting about healing our family relationships. I agree to see her, curious about what she could possibly think she has to offer me now that I've built a life she can't touch or control. She arrives at my Manhattan office looking like someone who has spent 2 years watching her carefully planned future evaporate in real time, wearing designer clothes that can't hide the desperation in her eyes. You, she says, and the careful calculation in her voice tells me she's rehearsed this conversation extensively. I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. Everything that happened with David, I was young and stupid, and I let my mother convince me that it was the only way to secure our family's future. I lean back in my executive chair, wearing a suit that was featured in Vogue's profile of successful women in entertainment, and smile with the genuine contentment that comes from knowing that her opinion of me no longer has any power to affect my happiness. Melissa, do you remember what you said at your engagement party? That you had been planning the surprise for months, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal that you were pregnant with the next generation of Chen heirs? Her face flushes red with shame as she realizes I remember every detail of her moment of triumph. The beautiful thing about becoming successful, I continue, is that you learn the difference between people who love you and people who need you for something. Your mother needed me to introduce David to the family. David needed me to provide access to inheritance money. You needed me to disappear quietly so your theft could proceed without complications. I stand and walk to the window that overlooks Central Park, the same view my father used to describe in letters he wrote to me before he died. Letters I found in Marcus's files. Letters my guardians intercepted and never delivered. Letters that proved someone in my family actually loved me enough to want me to have choices about my own life. My success isn't about revenge against you, I tell her without turning around. It's about building something meaningful from the pieces of my life that you couldn't steal because you didn't understand their value. You saw inheritance money and business connections. I saw stories that needed to be told and creative partnerships that could change how people think about family loyalty versus personal integrity. 2 years after my rebirth, Phoenix Rising Productions has offices in New York, Los Angeles, London, and Shanghai, with development deals spanning every major entertainment market in the world. We've produced 23 films, won 8 international awards, established a scholarship fund for orphaned children who want to pursue careers in creative industries, and created a foundation that provides legal assistance to people trying to escape family-based financial abuse. My face appears on magazine covers. My quotes are taught in business schools as examples of ethical leadership in entertainment industries, and my name trends on social media whenever we announce a new project that challenges audiences to think differently about power and privilege and the stories we tell ourselves about family loyalty. More importantly, I've built a life surrounded by people who remember my name because they chose to love me, not because they're obligated to tolerate me or because they need something from me that they can't get anywhere else. Daniel and I marry in Marcus's backyard in Brooklyn, surrounded by our chosen family of artists and activists and business partners who celebrate our partnership without needing anything from us in return except the promise that we'll continue creating stories that matter. The wedding is covered by entertainment journalists who focus on our creative collaboration rather than our financial assets, with photos that show us laughing together during the ceremony rather than posing stiffly for formal portraits designed to impress business associates. My wedding dress is designed by an artist whose work challenges conventional beauty standards, and Daniel's suit is made by a tailor who donates part of his profits to organizations that help young people escape family abuse. The final piece of justice comes when David, now working as a low-level assistant at a property management company after his planned infiltration of my family's business empire collapsed, along with their criminal organization, reaches out through my publicist to request a meeting about discussing a business opportunity that could benefit both our careers. I agree to see him, curious about what he could possibly think he has to offer me, now that I've built an entertainment empire worth more than my family's original hotel business ever was. He arrives at my Manhattan office looking like a man who has spent 3 years watching his carefully planned life collapse in real time, wearing a suit that tries too hard to look expensive, and carrying a briefcase that probably contains nothing more substantial than desperate hopes and recycled manipulation strategies. "You," he says, and the desperation in his voice is music to my ears because it confirms that every choice I've made since my rebirth has led me further away from his ability to hurt me. I made a terrible mistake. Melissa and it was never real. I was young and desperate, and I thought I wanted the easy path to success. But you're the one I should have chosen. You're the one who became everything I dreamed of achieving. I lean back in my executive chair, wearing the same designer suit I wore to last week's premiere, where our latest film won 3 international awards, and smile with genuine amusement at his transparent attempt to rewrite our history. "David, do you remember what you said to me at the family reunion? You said I was embarrassing myself because I couldn't accept that you chose someone better." His face goes pale as he realizes I remember every detail of his cruelty. "The beautiful thing about becoming successful," I continue, standing and walking to the window that overlooks the park where Daniel and I take evening walks while discussing our next creative projects, "is that you learn the difference between people who love you for who you are and people who love what they think you can do for them. You loved what you thought my family could do for your career. Daniel loves me because I make him laugh during 12-hour editing sessions, and because I remember how he likes his coffee, and because I support his creative vision, even when it means taking financial risks." I turn back to face him, this man who once held my heart and my future in his hands and threw both away for money he thought would be easier to steal than earn. This man who helped plan my murder because he believed my life was worth less than my inheritance. "My family sees my face on billboards now when they drive through Shanghai," I tell him, watching his expression change as he realizes the magnitude of what he lost. "They see my name in international newspapers when they're trying to conduct business with companies that know about their criminal convictions. They watch my films in theaters and remember exactly who they tried to erase from their family history." I walk back to my desk where framed photos show me with Daniel at various industry events and award ceremonies, pictures that capture genuine happiness rather than strategic business relationships. "But the difference between me and them," I say, sitting down in the chair that represents everything I've built without needing anyone's permission or approval, "is that I don't need you to remember my name anymore. I made it impossible to forget." He leaves my office without another word, and I never hear from him again. 6 months later, entertainment industry publications report that David Wu was arrested for attempting to embezzle money from his employer's client accounts, apparently convinced that he could replicate his failed Chen family infiltration strategy with a different target. The article mentions that he specifically targeted accounts belonging to entertainment industry clients, suggesting he was still trying to find a way back into the world I had built without him. That evening, Daniel and I attend the premiere of our latest film, a drama about a young woman who escapes family abuse to build her own business empire. Inspired by my story, but fictional enough to protect the privacy of everyone involved. The red carpet photos show us holding hands and laughing together, looking like partners who chose each other rather than people who settled for whatever was convenient or available. The film wins 4 awards that night, including Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay, and when I give my acceptance speech, I thank everyone who believed in stories about survival and transformation, and everyone who understands that the best revenge against people who try to erase you is living a life so brilliant that forgetting you becomes impossible. The audience gives me a standing ovation, and as the cameras flash and the applause continues, I realize that I have achieved everything I dreamed of during those dark years when I thought I was alone in the world. I have love that I didn't have to earn through suffering, success that I built with my own choices rather than inherited through family obligation, and most importantly, a name that people remember because they want to, not because they have to. My family sees that name everywhere now, in movie credits and award ceremonies and business magazines and entertainment news programs that play in the lobbies of the hotels they're still allowed to visit before their trials begin. They see my face and remember exactly who they decided was expendable, exactly what they lost when they chose theft over love, exactly how much their cruelty cost them in the end. But I don't build my success to hurt them anymore. I build it to create stories that matter, to support other people who are trying to escape impossible situations, and to prove that being forgotten by people who never deserved to remember you in the first place isn't a tragedy. It's a liberation that makes space for the people who will love you for exactly who you choose to become.